want to talk about art and trauma from a couple of different angles based on my own artistic experiment. So, first of all, the reason for working with art, or another way of saying that would be the more artistic, instinctual aspect of our consciousness and brain, which is the counterpart to the lineal logic that is the predominant consciousness in our culture. Trauma threatens not the survival of energy, but it threatens the survival of ego consciousness. That's really all that is threatened. You know, every one of our molecules will be digested, and roses will feed on our blood and our bones, and new life will be formed in the cycle of life. There is no death, there is transformation. Physiologically, it's less clear what happens to things like, whether you call it electricity or call it consciousness, in our brain. And we have a impatient dog who is eating electrical cables, so we have to occupy him. And this is Philip, and Philip, by the way, is another great bond of, or I guess remedy for trauma and PTSD, by simple fact that dogs are more consistent than human beings. One of the greatest threats and triggers to trauma is uncertainty. But most emotional and psychological states can be dealt with easily within the conscious mind of an ego because they don't threaten the ego. Trauma, on the other hand, erupts within the physiology when we perceive that our life is in danger, or when it is in danger and we perceive it. It's the perception. In other words, some people might argue, no, that didn't endanger your life. But if there's an aspect of us that sees that danger, then the trauma is triggered. So art brings in the aspects of the unconscious mind. Now, what the unconscious mind just means is that it's bigger than the ego. It doesn't fit inside the lens that feels threatened. In most of kind of the psychological maps of consciousness, the subconscious mind is bigger than the conscious mind, and the unconscious mind is bigger than the subconscious mind. And the ego is the tiniest bit, and it's the ego that is threatened, not the largest sense of psyche and self. In the same way that even in a play where one of the actors dies in the play, the part of us that is writing the script does not feel threatened. Even the actor, knowing it is an act, does not feel threatened. The death may be part of an interesting drama. But if you don't know you're an actor and you're the part that's dying, you feel very threatened. And so one of the healing remedies of trauma is to get in touch with parts of ourselves that are bigger than our immediate ordinary state of consciousness. And as part of my efforts to heal PTSD and the various traumatic coping mechanisms and symptoms that I find in my life, I've recently explored art. So there's a couple of levels of this experiment. So the first one, I'm in Phuket, Thailand, and this apartment came available for around 6,000 baht per month, including utilities, maybe about that. So 6,000 baht is $200. So $200, including utilities, Now, it's got this wonderful view of one of the largest Buddhas in Thailand, where is it? I guess it's right here, which you can't see. But it is a serene view for, number one. Number two, it's a pretty small apartment. It's a one bedroom with a little kitchenette. And it's right next door to an identical apartment, which we have been renting with my girlfriend. So there's a number of waves to this. First of all, it does not feel financially threatening to me. It does not feel financially. It feels in the level of, this is not going to hurt me financially. I'm not going to run out of money because I'm spending an extra $200 a month. That's very key when you're in a state of trauma, to not feel like you're exacerbating threat. Secondly, it gives me complete peace because my guideline with my partner, this being my creative studio, is that I will invite her over when I want to, share a project, but that she does not disturb me when I'm here. So knocks and unexpected visits do not happen here. So that provides a certain state of flow. I don't have to, there's no cell phones or anything like that. That's all in airplane mode. So I have an oasis. So that's the next building block in the ecology. And the reason I'm talking about this, by the way, is Western thought teaches us to make decisions in isolation to the ecology. Is this drug good? Should be for example, with psychedelics. Western medicine is having a difficult time integrating psilocybin, which is a very powerful psychological healing compound, in the right setting. But they're not used to thinking about setting as at least half of the value of a treatment. That if you take a sauna next to a construction site with hammering nails and people ogling you, the sauna is not therapeutic. And if you take it in a serene, meditative, silent environment, that it is. And if you take psilocybin with two healing therapists without agenda who support all your emotional states, it's healing. If you take it in a rave party, may or may not be. If you take it with white-coated clinicians who don't give a damn about your feelings, it's quite likely to be toxic, because the sociopathic culture is what we're trying to recover from, and to try and recover from a sociopathic culture with sociopaths is just not good common sense. So setting is everything, is what I'm trying to get. And so I'm telling you the recipe of the set in which this occurs. Now the thinking, I'm telling you about art, right? No. I'm really telling you about an ecology that is healing in its entirety. And the ecology is, first of all, being in Thailand, number one. It's an enormous healing for PTSD. Number two, choosing an apartment with a view of nature in a quiet area. Number three, being surrounded by pleasant neighbors. Number four, not having stress around money. Number five, the privacy. Number six, not being disturbed by technology. Then we come into painting, which is a right brain, in traditional sense. They're arguing about whether it really is in the right brain or whatever, but there's certainly a part of our consciousness that is that is more feminine, more intuitive, more instinctual, more emotionally driven, particularly when you're dealing with abstract, which is my style of art. So next we have the composition. Now, I love these variables. Like, this is my favorite color because it's separated the most. So at the art supply store, like, this brown is kind of bronzy up here, and then it goes in and it got little flecks, and then it crystallizes down here. Now, this has happened just because this paint has sat in the art supply store for X amount of months. This is a $4 bottle of paint. And This one also has a little bit, not much. So anyway, so I bought paints. I bought this set, $15. That was my first thing. I bought a lot of this titanium white, also acrylic. These canvases around $4 a piece. This easel, $20. I Velcroed it into position so it doesn't move. It'll hold quite large paintings. And so I guess the first thing is easy and cheap. So just going around, fiddling around in the art supply store, fun. My first few brushes, I like bold, big things. I just like that. So that's what I did. Now I've also learned that following rules is not fun for me, number one, and is overrated too. What I mean by that is, I mix oil, acrylic, and poster paints, plus gold glitter kind of paint and silver and all that with none. In other words, I do what works. Now this easel then came on available for $35, and so I just got this because sometimes I like to work on more painting. And the other thing, I started small, meaning I didn't know what would happen. So that was unknown, and but I started actually very small. My girlfriend, I bought her paints, and she's been doing a lot of painting, and from time to time I liked painting some of her painting. So, and then I painted one all myself, and that was my first experiment with her paints. And I thought, I'm going to get myself my own paints. So that was fun. And then the first painting I did was this. Now this I don't think is complete, meaning I was not satisfied with it. But I noticed as I moved to my next painting that part of the problem was that I was using too many colors. And so my next painting, in response to that, was this one. Because it allows you to be much more intimate with the color. Like this, we're dealing with the brown spectrum and white. White was the original canvas. I've added some titanium white, but basically dealing with browns and golds, the family of browns and white. And I like this painting a lot more. And so I started working in with blues. Of course, a definite rule for therapeutic art and all that is no perfectionism. This has to be fun. Let's see what happens. So we've let's see, we've got this one, which I liked making it. I don't like looking at it. And the fun thing with canvases is you just repaint them if you want to. If you want to repaint them, you can repaint them. This one, I liked and didn't like doing it at different times, and I like looking at it. And you kind of get the idea. One of my last, it's not my last one, this is one of my last ones here. I think I did this one last night. And yeah, so anyway, we're compromising with some. Maybe you'll get my head sometimes, maybe you'll get the painting sometimes, etc. So, so we've got that, and then I just put hooks on the wall that I using stickers, which is also fun to just look at the art. And then this one is going back a little bit more into more colors, which I quite like this one. And it flowed very easily. So it's you know, and here's how I used this painting. I've been making a lot of videos about trauma, and what I have to do is get a sense of if I'm making progress or not, because this is a very unknown terrain for my trauma illiterate ego. How do you manage it? And so that being the case, the question is, you know, am I making progress? Now, when the painting flows, I get a sense that while I don't fully understand the connection between my conscious and unconscious mind, that when things easily flow better out of the unconscious because of my conscious behavior, it is a good sign for me. At least I'm reading it that way. And so I'm able to say, yes, I'm making progress, which is encouraging. Because if I'm just dealing with the linear mental mind, it's hard to say. I make a video, maybe it pisses someone off. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. But I make a video and my conscious mind comes into more integration and peace. Oh, that's a good sign. So let's make more of those videos and watch how it affects the painting. And basically, depending on what one's thinking, feeling, talking about, etc., paints and paintings evolve and respond. There's a dynamic rapport. So basically what I'm saying is that having access to the unconscious mind through art, poetry, free expression of art, dance, singing, sounds, just making sounds, and various improvisation is a great practice. So that's what I've learned, and it's becoming, you know, somewhat expensive, meaning I think we're into the project, if I add up 3,000, oh, it's not much, $300, I guess, for, you know, maybe 30 canvases, all the paints I could want, 2 easels, and that's a ton of fun. 30 canvases for $300. You know, we're looking at about $10 a piece for each art project. In terms of the facility to have a transcendent experience. Now, here's what I'm playing with in a couple of areas. So sometimes I work alone. Well, I always work alone. Sometimes I work in silence. Sometimes I listen to a book like Marion Woodman is great with her work on dreams, or Robert Bly, another poet. You know, sometimes I'll listen to a poet on YouTube or Audible. Sometimes I listen to music. I like Yasos. Heavenly Dreamscapes by Yasos is a nice 1-hour soundtrack that I find quite delightful. And then sometimes I'll make noise. I'll get into I'll get into the painting, and my arm, I'll start moving, so it'll work with transmuting aggression. And then the other thing is noise. It's like it's moving in, flying around. What's going on here? What is it? The conscious mind just witnesses, but something comes through my body, and images move, energy moves around. It provides a focus for that to occur, and I am healthier on the other side. Energy has moved, and the medium of painting, be it oil, acrylic, whatever it is, water. Well, I don't think this would work so well with watercolor, but it could. It's just that aggressive energy, whatever. It seems to kind of work great with a pigment of some kind, which acrylic or oil does. I'm happy with acrylic. It seems to be much smoother. Seems to be. I don't know. There was something gritty about the red I used when I tried mixing oil with the acrylic and stuff. So that's it. Now, when is it done? When it feels good to be done, that's when it's done. You can do a single haiku, so to speak, a single an issue and say that's done. You can do something in one energy and then you relate to it. This is another thing where you can heal. I learned this in poetry as a teenager, that I could write about my worst feelings in the first half of the poem, then look and ask for help to transmute those worst feelings in the mid part of the poem, and transcend and transform the worst feelings into their counterparts of joy and healing and beauty and integration in the last part of the poem. And that I would basically move through a transcendent psychological state in the process of writing a poem purely intuitively, following the logic of images. And the same can occur with a painting, where one of my favorite paintings that's hanging in the other apartment is, first I expressed all my aggression and anger and rage, and then I looked at how that rage could become a context for contrast and beauty that accentuated the other parts of me even more. In other words, if I hadn't put all that violent red and da-da-da-da-da, then all the nice gold wouldn't stand out as much, and all the nice orange wouldn't, so that you put it into context. You give it perspective. And this is the magic of the passing of time, that there's this intense sorrow, and then you work on it. And slowly the sorrow transmits into a greater vitality of appreciating the present, or something else that can be magic. That every energy can take a new form in an area that's more useful to us at the time, with the magic of transformation, changing form. So that's my artistic experiment. We're about 10 days into it, something like that. It's fun as hell. I love going to the art supply store. I love wood. I like wood. There's this lovely hypocrisy that environmentalists love the wood that you have to cut down trees for. There's a lovely hypocrisy, but I love wood. Just the whole thing. I like this wooden table, and I love how minimalistic it is. I love that this is taking place in a $200 a month apartment, with typhoons happening outside, and very questionable water tightness. I just stick a bucket under the floor. It's just so fun. It's a playground, which when you have these $4,000 a month studios and this and that and the other, and you're not worth anything unless you sell it, and there's no play in that. There's no soul in that. It becomes a commercial calculation rather than a soulful expression. So that's what this is: soulful expression with no emphasis for it to do anything other than move energy in a pleasing way in the moment.